Welcome to The Faithful Steward. This is a podcast all about sharing biblical wisdom and practical insights in order to help church leaders pursue and teach financial freedom as part of Christian discipleship. We believe this is a spiritual conversation, and this is a place where the church needs to lead the way in order to move our communities forward in how we steward God's resources. I'm your host, James Lenhoff, and I am so passionate about this conversation and helping leaders have the confidence to step into it. We believe that if we help people thrive financially and grow spiritually, it changes everything. And I am so excited to join you on this journey. This podcast is brought to you by Good Sense. If you'd like more information about what we're up to, you can go to our website at goodsensemovement.org. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. Today we're going to talk about an old friend of all of ours, buyer's remorse. I know we've all been there. We've all had this experience where we're asking ourselves at some point, why did I do that? Why did I spend that money? Why did I buy that thing that was so dumb? Buyer's remorse is a really uncomfortable feeling. There's no question. But it can be one of our best teachers if we'll listen to it, if we'll sit with it, if we'll allow ourselves to be uncomfortable in it for a little while. We can grow so much in our decisions in the future if we don't skip past buyer's remorse in the present. And so let's talk about why we spend. Why do we spend money? Look, we all struggle at some level on one end or the other. Either we feel this total freedom to spend whatever we want, however we want, because it's ours, we did it, we're entitled to it. That ownership mindset can really put us in a place where we can become reckless and thoughtless spenders. On the other side of the spectrum, we see people who are so security-minded that they're just afraid to spend any money. Any spending at all is terrible. It's evil. It's selfish. It's wasteful. And so we get spun up in this sense of avoiding spending at all costs or self-loathing when we do spend. And so a lot of times just spending in general is a bad word. It's a conversation that creates a lot of tension and fighting in marriages because we tend to marry our opposite. We have a go and a woe in every relationship. And the go is saying, hey, let's spend, let's do the things. That's why we have the money. Let's go have fun. And the woe is saying, let's not spend, let's cut back, let's always say no to everything. And those two tend to come together as a couple, and they fight over this exact tension. And so just as a default, we need to get to a place where we accept the truth that we will spend money. It's just part of the deal. It's part of the equation. In our society today, the way that this works is we exchange money for things, for goods that we need, and also for things that we want. And we need to recognize that there is no situation where there is no spending. We will always have this be part of our human experience. And so what we're aiming for in faithful stewardship is not a lack of spending. A lot of times people think that that's what it looks like to be a faithful steward, is to spend no money ever on ourselves whatsoever. That's not what this looks like. A faithful steward is really focused more on intentional spending. And when we experience buyer's remorse, it's normally because we have tripped into unintentional spending. When we buy things without thinking, without truly understanding why we're doing it and what we're hoping to get out of it, we eventually end up hitting that wall of buyer's remorse. So first, we tend to see this push to spend when we have that go and the woe. So sometimes we just give in. We spend because the person that we're walking life with is saying, let's go do the thing, and we don't want to have the fight anymore, and so we just fold and we give in and we spend. And if we haven't decided together that this is something that we want, then it is really hard for there to not be some level of buyer's remorse. Either you have the spouse who spent and it didn't end up actually being as exciting or enjoyable as they hoped it would be, and they have remorse because now they got to deal with the I told you so from the other spouse. Or you have the spouse who didn't want to spend, who can't reconcile that this spending wasn't wasteful or selfish or any number of ways that they have judged it to be a bad decision, but they gave into it anyway. And so now they feel remorse because they shouldn't have spent that money. And so that's a very common thing, is just that tension between the two causes someone to give up, and we spend money because we just don't want to have an intentional conversation first. A really big one is that we spend money in order to fit in. So we want to keep up with the Joneses. We want to drive the same kind of cars that the people in our neighborhood drive. We want to live in the same kind of house. We want to have the same experience that we're seeing others in our life have. And then we end up feeling this sense of buyer's remorse because we are either overpaying and we're stretching beyond our means, and we hate that we're still paying for this thing that we've long since thrown away or upgraded. We're still paying for the last version of the phone that we used to have because we financed it because we wanted to keep up with everybody else around us, even though we really couldn't afford it. And so that stretching in order to stay in the in crowd, in order to meet social norms, leads to a deep sense of frustration, because it doesn't fulfill, it doesn't help us feel better over the longer term, and we end up resenting the weight that it puts on our shoulders and on our family's shoulders to keep carrying. Sometimes we spend simply because we impulsively are prompted to. This is why marketers package things the way they do, why they put them at the certain spot in the aisle in the store at a certain height to catch the right eyes. Maybe it's our kids that say, I want that useless piece of plastic, and they're forcing us to spend money on things we know they don't need and we don't really want, but we don't, again, want to have that fight. Or we just decide that we want it in the moment with no thought of why or what we're even grabbing for. Just that tendency to fall prey to those unintentional responses to prompts to spend. It's a huge reason why we spend. And it's a real big reason why that remorse hits so hard, because we truly don't know why we bought it. We are such creatures of habit. We respond to certain marketing cues, and we don't really know why we put that thing in our cart. And then we get home and we go, I didn't need that. What was I doing? And we start to beat ourselves up. Another big motivator in our purchase decisions is instant gratification. We have created a society that is built around instant gratification. This idea that you can have it now, you just have to pay for it over time. So buy now, pay later has become kind of our theme as a country. And so it's easy to acquire, and so we don't have to wait. We don't have to postpone or delay or think about or prepare for any of these purchases. We can just buy them right now, and we'll figure it out later. Just throw it on the pile of payments I'm already making. The system is set up to take advantage of our wiring that is bent towards instant gratification. That's also related to this last one, which is the ease of purchasing. We can literally speak it into the air now, and it'll be on our doorstep tomorrow. It is so easy to acquire. It's not just that we're financing it, it's also that we can push a button, and with one click, we can buy things that are shipped overnight to us for free. We get this deep sense of satisfaction that we get to get that jolt of dopamine, that feel-good chemical, because we hit the button, almost like a lab rat that's hitting the button to get a treat. We're responding to that prompt, and it's so easy to do, and we end up in remorse because of our thoughtlessness, our tendency to just hit the button without understanding what we're actually trying to buy. And so all of these things lead to a buyer's remorse experience. And here's the problem. Many of these tendencies are rooted in medicating emotions we don't want to feel. We feel inadequate. We feel like we don't compare well with others, that we're falling behind. And so in order to medicate that emotion, we buy things to keep up with the Joneses. Or we feel like a failure, and in order to medicate that, we buy something that looks successful. Right? We're medicating these negative emotions rather than feeling them. But here's the problem. Buyer's remorse is a negative emotion. And guess what we do when we feel negative emotion? We medicate it. We buy more stuff. And so if we don't listen to it, Buyer's remorse actually, ironically, can be a motivator to create more buyer's remorse. We get stuck in this cycle where we're constantly medicating a negative emotion by buying things we don't need, and then we resent the fact that we did it, and we feel bad, so we buy more things we don't need. But if we sit in it, if we just listen to it, that's where the growth is. That's where we get the opportunity to change our behavior when we understand it. We need to understand what it is we're reaching for in those purchase decisions. Why did I buy it? What was going on in me that created this reactive, thoughtless purchase? Because that is actually what I need to understand. We don't need to beat ourselves up. We don't need to go into self-loathing and self-judgment and hating ourselves. It's actually not a super productive use of that emotion. What we need to do is be curious. Ask really good questions of ourselves, of our spouse, of our kids. What were you hoping that would do for you? So that we can actually start to find healthier ways to achieve what we're actually looking for. You know, maybe you spontaneously and impulsively bought a board game or bought a video game or bought something that you, and if you ask yourself, really, why did I do that? What you might find is, I was hoping that we would spend more time together as a family. Oh, well, let's actually solve that problem. Let's talk about what it would look like for us to do that. Or if you way overspent on vacation because you just wanted to get away, you just wanted to escape, that's actually a problem that we need to talk about. How do we solve that? What are you escaping from? What's the burden and the overwhelm that you're carrying? And how can we actually alleviate that without overspending, without stretching way beyond our means and financing something that's trying to make that pain go away? If we're trying to keep up with the Joneses, if we really wrestle with who we want to be seen as, what we may find is we've actually never answered that question as a family. We might need to do some work on our family mission, on our vision. Who are we? What matters to us? What are the things we want to be known for? Because if we've identified that, then we can start to have a counter argument to that tendency to just keep stretching and keep reaching beyond our means. Inside this gift of buyer's remorse is an opportunity for you to look inside your heart and ask, what's going on there? What are you really in need of? And how do we bring our deep relationships into that? How do we bring God into that and ask Him to fill up those voids rather than us constantly filling them with impulsive spending? It also speaks to an awareness that if we have some intentionality, if we build a spending plan together where we've worked through our non-negotiables as a family, we've built out our priorities, these are the things that we absolutely have to experience together. We've chosen them. And we're willing to let go of the things that don't fit or that we can't do. If we choose to pick this up, we're going to put these things down. If we wrestle through all of those consequences and we really do understand what we're choosing, then those things serve as a counterbalance to that impulsive buying, because we know it could get in the way of this other thing we've chosen. It could actually prevent us from experiencing what we decided we would experience as a family. But if we don't have that counterbalance, we have no reason not to. And so that combination of the spending plan and the non-negotiables helps aim us at what we actually want so that we are less subject to all of the prompts and the social cues that tell us to buy what we don't really want. And then we can start to grow out of that buyer's remorse pattern and start to actually acquire what's really giving our family life, what's really leading to all the things that we're hoping for. So much of this idea of faithful stewardship boils down to intentionality. It's not just that we need to think about ahead of time what we're choosing. That's a big, big part of it. We also need to reflect on what has happened and the decisions where we recognize that we've not been a faithful steward, and not run away from them, not tell ourselves we're terrible or we're bad or judge ourselves, but actually be curious to ask what happened there so that we can be thoughtful enough to not make the same mistakes over and over again. Faithful stewardship is a journey in the direction of growth. It's not a light switch, but we can only grow when we sit in that buyer's remorse and ask really good questions that lead to different answers in the future. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Faithful Steward podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for links and other information that we mentioned in today's episode. Also, be sure to check out our website at goodsensemovement.org to get all the resources we offer churches to help equip them in teaching financial stewardship to their community. If you have any questions or any topics you want to make sure we cover on our show, you can email me at jameslenhoff@goodsensemovement.org. I'd love to hear from you.